Hi, and welcome back to a podcast above a convenience store, Talking Twin Peaks. I'm Joe Fremming from the Joe Down. With me, as always, is Paul Muad'Dib from Cast That Movie. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well, bud. How are you doing?
I am. I spent the afternoon watching our episode today, part 8 of The Return, and my brain still feels a little like jelly.
This is going to be a tricky one to talk about.
There's a lot going on, even though there's a lot of it's like surreal madness. But yeah, so everybody, we're on part 8 of The Return. This is the infamous episode where David Lynch's brain just money shots all over all over our TVs, in a sense.
This is, I remember, this episode stuck with me. I remember watching this episode when it aired and just being absorbed by the whole damn thing. And at the end of it, turning at my wife and going, what the fuck did we just see? I said, I don't know what it was, but it was profound as fuck.
Yeah, I had no idea what to think. Obviously it takes a turn for the very strange after like 10, 15 minutes. I had no idea what to think. I was just kind of like, my brain was just spinning. Like, what the fuck was that? It took me a while to think about it before I actually appreciated it. I'm not going to say I loved every second of it when I first saw it, because I just had no idea what was going on. And the more I've seen this episode of part of The Return, I've rewatched this probably more than any other parts of The Return, just because it's like watching a painting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a matter of fact, in the Z to A box set that I have, it's a 4K transfer of that episode.
Yes, I would love to see that. But it's really it's the most surreal thing I think Lynch has done, and that's including Eraserhead and his shorts.
This is David Lynch going heroin into the vein. Like, this is just, he's mainlining himself into you on this episode.
And we'll talk about it at the end, but like him and Frost actually wrote out a blueprint for this and like Frost just kind of let him do his thing. He's like, yep, this is kind of like what we have in mind, but David, just fucking do what you do. And he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let's start. I guess let's just start with the normalish part of the episode.
Yeah, you could call it that. So, picks up right where last episode ended. Mr. C and Ray are in their getaway car. We have Mr. C having a weird looking program on his cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
He's just tracking devices on the vehicle. He's detected them right away, and he kind of takes care of them by popping some gibberish into a text. So he takes care of that. Ray is wondering where Daria is. Last time we saw Daria, Mr. C put a bullet in her face.
God, I shouldn't be laughing at that, but yeah.
But Mr. C lies and says she's waiting on a phone call from them when they get somewhere safe. And he brings up a place, like a safe place to go. And we'll see this later on, the farm.
The farm. Yep. We don't know what the farm is right now. We'll see it later on.
We'll see it later on, but they do bring it up that this is where Ray's kind of like his getaway safe house is. And in the drive, Mr. C is obviously impatient because he keeps bringing up Ray has something that he wants. And unfortunately for Mr. C, what he wants, Ray has in his head. He didn't write it down anywhere, so Ray's insurance from not getting shot in the face like Daria is to be able to string Mr. C along here. And he even calls him Mr. Cooper at one point. Which
yes, he does. He does call him Mr. Cooper. I caught that, and that was weird, right? I was like, oh, Mr. Cooper, okay.
Yeah, it's hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Hanging with the family.
TGIF.
hanging out with my family.
Gonna have a good time.
Gonna have a good time.
Oh, Birdemic. Oh. Anyway, we see that fucker Ray is now wanting to extort money from Mr. C for this information. Information is power, as we all know, and so this is starting to rub Mr. C the wrong way. Even though it's weird, he's like a multi-billionaire, and he wants these coordinates for whatever reason. We know because we've seen it, but we'll just leave it here for now.
Yep.
Even though I just spoiled it by saying coordinates, but that's what he wants is.
Well, they've already kind of. I think they've already kind of said that he wants to. I mean, that was brought up early on. He's seeking the coordinates.
Yeah. So Mr. C has Ray take a turn through like on a road where there's no lights, and it was crazy. I was watching this, and it was hard to see things in this episode for some reason. I
had to crank the brightness up on my TV actually.
Yeah, I did.
I might have to turn it back down when I go turn it back on.
Yeah, I don't remember having to do that when I first saw this, but I think I might have had my adjustments on my TV set for like vivid, and that kind of made everything just more black. So it was tough to see. Not like that Game of Thrones episode where I couldn't see a fucking thing.
Well, I think the difference for me, I remember, was when it was on at night, so I wasn't competing with the glare coming in from my windows.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was like I was watching in my bedroom TV, and my blinds aren't the greatest at blocking out the sunlight, and so yeah, I had to completely change around I had to pause it, fuck with my settings to be able to see what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like last time I watched this was at night, so I didn't have that problem either. So either way, it was dark. It's tough to see, but it's by design. That's what Lynch wants.
Mm-hmm.
They're on this dark road, and that fucker Ray needs to take a leak.
And Mr. C is fucking done with that fucker Ray.
He's not happy with the. He grabs his gun from the glove compartment. His Ray's pissing. Little does he know, Ray also has a gun, and he's double crossed him somehow.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
I don't either, unless. Well, we know from the final dossier Ray's working with Project Blue Book, so he's an informant. So they might have put something in there for him, or he might have got a gun on his way out.
Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible
because he's a paid informant. But he pulls it on Ray. He just. Even though I think I saw him like checking the barrel for bullets, it's just nothing's happening. The gun's just defunct. And then Ray just shoots the shit out of him.
Yeah, shoots him twice. And we're like, holy shit. I'm thinking this is the death that they were talking about. He needs to die. Ray's the fucking hero. Then he goes in to make the final shot. And that's when normality completely leaves this episode.
Well, I don't know about you, but like when the lightning started happening, I felt like Ray was going to get a quickening like in Highlander.
There could be only one down there.
There could be only one Cooper.
No. Keep in mind, though, that Highlander was a documentary filmed in real time, okay?
But yeah, so we get lightning, very muted soundtrack, a lot of bass and like static, and we see these woodsmen coming out of nowhere, which is just creepy. Like this is probably like one of the creepiest episodes of Twin Peaks ever.
Oh God, yeah.
So the woodmen, they come out of nowhere and they're digging into his wounds and then smearing blood all over Mr. C as like Ray's just standing there, and they're like, it's weird because they're transparent too. As you can see through them, like they're ghosts.
Yeah, they're super transparent, and like they're ghosts. There's several. There's about 3 circling Ray, and keeping him back from making the final shot. and they start with kind of patting the dirt, and then Mr. C kind of transposes, and then we see Ray fall to the ground and does that weird ass David Lynch super slow-mo yell.
Yeah.
That's always just super creepy. And then Mr. C's covered with blood from these guys, right? From the woodsmen.
Yeah.
And it's like then we see the orb come out, and in the orb we see Bob's face.
Yes. And not only do we see it, Ray sees it too.
Yep, and that's what causes Ray to freak out and run away to the car, and he drives off. And
this raises the question, did Leland have an orb in him, you think?
Okay. I knew we were going to be getting into a lot of theories in this one and a lot of ideas, because there's a lot we got to discuss on what does this mean. You bring up a good point. I don't know, because I wonder, because the doppelganger isn't actually a human, right? It's a construct from the Black Lodge. So I wonder if there's something different when it interacts with that versus if it was in an actual person.
Yeah.
Because we never see, like with Leland, Bob would take over Leland. And Bob is not taking over the doppelganger. He is the doppelganger, right?
Yeah, because the doppelganger is basically a blank slate. He's just,
Yeah, so I think the rules are different when he's in like in the doppelganger. We'll come up with a different name for it later. We've mentioned on some of the previous episodes, but I think the rules are different in that regards.
Yeah, and I mean, this is probably just due to circumstances in that Frank Silva has been long dead by the time they start filming.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, there's a lot of concessions that have to be made because poor Frank is dead, and he did not want to, David Lynch wanted to honor and did not want to change Bob because of that.
No. So it's interesting. So we see, there's a entity inside the doppelganger, which is housing Bob.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob's like a living thing within him. And then, Ray runs off, and he calls Philip, which we assume is Jeffries. This goes back to where I think they're not really talking Philip Jeffries. They're talking to
Albert.
Yep. Albert he's filled with secrets.
Yes. Yes. And he's like, I killed him, but I don't know if I killed him because he got help. So I don't know. I don't know. He may have lived.
And he mentions, I saw something in him. I'll tell you later, which is, alarming, but yeah, so he's out. Mr. C's caked in blood, and we go to the roadhouse where the 9-inch nails.
the 9-inch nails, and I love that. Even in the credits, it's quoted the 9-inch nails.
Yeah, and they do their "She's Gone Away,"
She's gone away.
The lyrics are very much. I mean, you can read into it. I think he wrote it for Twin Peaks. They seem basically about Laura Palmer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
High school. Yes. I'll just like in high school, me and my buddies and you, I think, were kind of obsessed with 9-inch nails.
Oh yeah.
Trent Reznor was he was a huge fan of the original one at Twin Peaks. He's worked with Lynch since Lost Highway. But this whole thing too is this whole episode is dark and unsettling, and it even does it with the Roadhouse performance in that it's not at the end of the show. It's put in like after the first act.
Well, because that's kind of the end of the episode of what we would know as an episode, right?
Kind of.
Because weird shit happens with there. But yeah, I mean, first of all, again, Jean-Michel, is that his name, Jean-Michel? The Renault brother that is running it now?
Yeah, I think so.
is a genius.
He's the best booking agent.
He should have been running the Roadhouse back in the 80s because back in the 90s because my God.
These acts, the chromatics and
Sharon Von Etten. Yeah, the 9 Inch Nails.
Later on, he gets Eddie Vedder.
Edward Severson. Which is, I mean, so.
Well, unlike his brother, his brain isn't as blank as a fart,
As blank as a fart. No. Then all of a sudden the song ends and it cuts to Cooper sitting up, and you're going, what the fuck?
Yeah, Cooper, he just kind of rises up, and in the back of my head, every time, just because I'm snarky like that, I just hear like the theme from Terminator 2.
That's, we'll be getting into it because that's basically what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's jarring too. Again, like I think what Lynch does is like we're kind of like used to this groove of the new iteration of the show, and he upends it by I'm going to put the musical performance in between this one scene. Like we're going to have Cooper get shot, and then he's like, after 9 Inch Nails plays, he's going to rise from the dead, and then fuck it, we're going to White Sands, New Mexico on July 6th, 1945.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the part that is going to be difficult to explain in words, but we're going to try it, and we're going to there's going to be a lot of theories, I think, thrown out on this. I think this is going to be a lot of hypotheticals and interpretations and just discussion, because this is an episode that you and I have not really sat down and dissected with each other before.
No, and this is also, I remember after getting at the end of this episode, I had so many questions, but at least one thing I was happy is reading Secret History and knowing the importance of the Trinity test in that, at least gave me something to latch onto with this.
Bingo.
I did, even though it's just like knowing the sex magic of Jack Parsons, which almost seemed like a weird thing. Like, why are they going on and on about this? Well, part 8 kind of answers that.
Yes. So we cut to the atomic bomb going off, the first atomic bomb of the Trinity test. And it zooms in to where I think it's the quarks and the atoms and the neutrons and those types of things. I think that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, you're going into the explosion as it's going on. So it's chaos. I like how it jumps from black and white into very vivid colors, like almost Argentino colors, like in Suspiria.
Yes.
Was really cool. And, you're just kind of like, your experience, this is an experience, and what you're experiencing is the chaos and things being torn apart and the complete and utter destruction man had created.
And Lynch is taking you inside every aspect of it.
Yes.
Right.
And it's soundtracked with, and I'm gonna butcher this name, but Christoph Penderecki's.
I butcher that name all the time too. Yes.
Serenity up to the victims of Hiroshima. It's that avant-garde music played along with the avant-garde visuals, and
yes,
it seems like it's almost like if Pink Floyd were like evil and they did a stage show in a sense.
I think this is what we would have gotten out of the Echoes album had Syd Barrett stayed.
This is what we're seeing is what was going on in Syd Barrett's mind.
Pretty much. So all this thing, and there's just so much to it. I mean, the explosions, you're going in, you actually see yourself kind of going up and through and down the explosions and like the different anatomy of how an atomic bomb operates and where its power is going through, where there's the influx, like it creates like almost like a vacuum inside of it. And then Then once that's done, it cuts to a place labeled the convenience store.
where we record this podcast.
Correct. Well, up above it, yes.
But I just want to like the actual visual of the bomb going off and as it's zooming in. Lynch is, he's pretty like with his hokey effects. That looks really good.
Very, very good.
Like I think they spent probably a lot of their budget just on part 8. I think.
Yes, they did an amazing job on that part. It is just visually stunning.
Yeah, and then it just continues, like you said, the convenience store where we're trying to record the damn podcast, but all these fucking woodsmen are wandering around.
Yeah, you can hear noise in the background of them fucking around in my part of the area of the convenience store. We have to do it apart because of the way we do the record. Don't ask people; it's just how we do it.
And we're seeing like smoke and like woodsmen are kind of like jaggedy, and like there's this light in the store. And what we're seeing here, and I think this is by design, because what we talked about in the last episode, where we saw like time jump change with like in the diner of the double R.
Yep.
We're seeing this with the woodsmen because they're appearing and vanishing.
Yep.
That's my theory, is that this is timelines like just blowing up. Like we done fucked up with the Trinity test.
Yes, and when we get done with that, we'll get to a point where I want to discuss my theory as to what this is. And I have a certain point when we get there. I think will be the correct time to do it. So yeah, they're coming in and out, and then it cuts to the experiment that we saw in episode 2.
Yep, the experiment. I think it's labeled experiment. I think it's pretty safe to say this is Judy.
Yeah.
This is Judy. And look, we all predicted Bob's origin story was he's vomited up by like a demon lady in outer space after the A-bomb went off. Like, we get it, David. We know this is happening.
We knew that was the logical way to go, sir.
Yeah, and we'll get into it because, like, Frost talks about like they were super interested in doing like an origin thing, which is like if you follow Lynch and Twin Peaks, like an origin story doesn't seem like it's in their wheelhouse, but like then they did it, but they totally did it their fucking way.
Yes.
But yeah, so it was the experiment, and she vomits up, and then we see the orb that we saw in Mr. C with Bob's face up in it.
And she's all white, right? And it comes out and it's very plasticky, the way she's vomiting up all this stuff. And then we see her like with eggs and other things that she's vomiting out. And and then it turns to red and gold, and you get back to the embers, and then you get back to the radiation of the bomb, right? Okay. This is the part where I think I want to get through that, and this is what I wanted to think. So we talk about how time isn't linear, right? But I think there's a linkage in certain ways. And what I'm assuming is happening here, and this is my interpretation of what's happening, is I think that the lodges are influenced by human behavior. As people do bad, the bad lodges grow. As people do good deeds, the white lodge grows in power in a way. There's waning in that regards. And while time isn't linear, in their world, it's linear to us. So when those acts happen in our world, well, theirs isn't linear, it creates this problem. And I think that the A-bomb, when that went off, that gave Judy this extreme immense, in that instant, this extreme immense power to do this.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, I think. That's what we'll get to it when we get to the firemen. but because he sees that, but we're kind of jumping ahead with that. But yeah, there's with the lodges, there's got to be balance, and
Mm-hmm.
as we saw, when you break the rules, like with Bob and Doppelkoop, things can go awry pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I agree. I think it's like when good things happen, the White Lodge has the upper hand. When bad things do, the Black Lodge, and they got to figure out a way to balance it out. And that goes into Lynch's fascination with dualism.
Exactly. Right. Right. Yes. Yes. This is playing right into Lynch's philosophy of dualism, and this falls into several religions' idea of dualism, which is where good deeds will empower the demons. Good deeds will empower the what's it, the Almighty side, or the heavenly side, or the good side, or the white side, and misdeeds.
Karma. It's that,
Yeah,
you know.
essentially, yes. So then it cuts to this sea.
The purple sea. We've seen this.
We've seen the purple sea.
We have. We saw that with Cooper when he was on the doodad out in space. Technical term.
Technical term, doodad in space.
Yep. We see that this giant rock tower thing, which made me immediately think of Mortal Kombat 2. Like after you beat a character, you keep going up the road until you fight Shao Kahn. I'm sorry, that's just where my brain goes sometimes.
Nope, it looks like it. It looks like it.
Mortal Kombat!
Christopher Lambert. Wait, nope. He wasn't into.
Hey, he was in Highlander too.
He was in Highlander too.
Oh, that's a bad movie. Anyway, so we get to the top and we see like a white, almost looks like an observatory.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you thought?
Exactly. I thought it's like an observatory or a lighthouse of sorts. Yep.
Yeah. This is where, at least what I think is, where we see the White Lodge or something, the equivalent of what the Red Room is for the opposite side of the entity. It looks like a 1920s silent movie, and we see Senorita Dido there.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about Senorita Dido?
She's a lodge entity for the other side of the coin, man. Like, we don't see many. I think these are the only two we've ever. No, wait, we got the Senior Drool Cup from season 2. So.
Yep, we got Senior Drool Cup. Yes. So, yeah, obviously she's a white entity. What's really interesting is she's there, I think, in this regards, just to show there's other White Lodge entities for anything. I don't think there's any significance of anything that she has done in the previous seasons.
Yeah, well, it's new. Like she's new, just like the woodsmen are new.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting just this world that we knew from 30 years ago now, almost.
Well, the woodsmen aren't exactly new because we saw them in Fire Walk with Me.
It doesn't, but it's not like
it's not them.
It's not like it doesn't look. It's just like, I think that was like a throwaway weird thing maybe Lynch threw in that they kind of expanded upon, but we don't know much about Senior Dido. I do, but it does look like a black and white 1920s silent movie, down to like the weird jazz music.
Oh yeah. No, it definitely looks like a 1920s
flapper.
Mm-hmm. Yes, flapper speakeasy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what we started hearing a distorted like bong thing, like a noise. It feels like an alarm.
Yep.
It's what I think it is an alarm that so this is how the White Lodge know there's some fuckery afoot going on with the other side. Because it's inside a giant bell-looking thing. We see stuff like we saw stuff like we saw this on when Cooper was out on the metal thing in space or whatever. It was doing the same thing, making the distorted bong noises. We see it again later with regards to Philip Jeffries. These are just like, they're kind of, I think Lynch just likes these, just likes the general aesthetic of these things. So he just pops them in. All the power to him.
Yes.
And then we see the fireman who we saw at the very beginning talking to Cooper, played by Carl Stuckian, who was also the Giant in the original run of Twin Peaks.
Now, it is important to note, Joe, that in this episode, he is labeled as question mark.
Yeah, but later on, he's credited as the fireman.
Correct.
But yeah, in this, he's credited as question mark. Yeah, but he's. I don't think it's the same. I think we've discussed. There was brought up in Secret History. There was a race of giants.
Yes.
So I think he's not the giant we got to know in the original run of the show.
Absolutely, no, he is not. This is not the giant that we knew from the show. No.
Yeah. What would you say he's the equivalent of the Arm here, or?
I from what I saw, I think he's the equivalent of Philip of I'm assuming. What's that?
Mike.
Yes, he's the yep. I think he's the equivalent of Gerard, and Dido's the equivalent of the Arm.
Okay. All right. So the fireman walks in. He's looking. He's hearing this noise. Again, we're hearing this old timey jazz, and this is when this place looks a lot like. I don't know if you thought this. I'm sure you did, but this seems also feels a lot like Henry's apartment building in Eraserhead.
It did. I got that. The other vibe I got from it was Metropolis.
Yes.
Yes, I got a lot of Metropolis vibes from this.
Yeah, this really.
To clarify, the 1930s version or the 1920s version of Metropolis.
Yeah, this is like, again, the return feels like it's Lynch's swan song in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing things that are kind of like aesthetically similar to his past work. It's really cool. Then the fireman leaves the room. His footsteps are backward, which, at least that's consistent with the Black Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
He walks into a giant room where there's another bell-looking thing. This is so hard to describe.
It's so hard to describe, but yeah, he walks into another room where there's like this.
It's a bigger room too.
Mm-hmm. It's a bigger room. And where there's this,
it's basically a theater.
It's yes. It's a small vintage movie theater with a film projector, and he's standing there and he's watching the images of the detonation. Now, you're familiar with riff tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had you rewatched the Joel version called Cinematic Titanic?
Yeah, I've seen a few of those, yeah.
Okay, the way they have that kind of set up, the way they watch the movies that way, that's also kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah, I don't think that's what Lynch was going for. I doubt David Lynch has heard of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I don't know. I bet he has, because I bet he was worried some of his shit was going to show up there.
I couldn't even imagine them trying to watch Eraserhead. Oh my God. But yeah, it's like a big movie theater, old vintage theater. It also reminds me of the theater in Holland Drive too.
Absolutely. Yes.
So he's kind of like hitting on like all different kind of themes and things. And the fireman's looking at the screen and he sees the explosion. He sees Judy giving birth to Bob and her vomit bubbles. I sound like a crazy person, but he's visibly troubled by what he's seeing.
Absolutely. So then he starts to levitate himself and opens his mouth, and the opposite of what we saw coming out of Judy's mouth or the experiment's mouth was light and tendrils of energy starts coming out of his mouth and his head, forming a galaxy.
Golden galaxy. we trust me, people. We are not on acid right now.
No, we are not. But yeah, it's
Oh, it
forming.
sounds a lot like we are.
It does sound a lot like we are.
Hey,
Like,
man, the golden universe just popped out of his forehead.
hey, Joe, I can't find my car.
This is a Jerry Horn fever dream.
So, maybe all this is what's going on in Jerry's head while he's in the forest. So
He just dreamed up of Twin Peaks. None of it happened. It's just Jerry.
Jerry fucked up in the forest. So, and then they start forming, and stars are, and then stars are, and then the universe is projected on the screen, and Senorita Dido enters. And I want to make it very clear: the only reason why we know she's Senorita Dido is not because there's any dialogue. There is no dialogue during any of this, mind you. We just know it because of the credits.
Yeah. I like Senorita Dido. I just it's just the mystery of Lynch. We're never gonna know more about these characters. They're just kind of there.
Yep.
But she walks in, and she walks into a spotlight near the fireman. As gold is just popping out of his forehead and creating a galaxy, a golden galaxy, which spawns a golden orb.
Yes, and in that golden orb, we see the face of we kind of start to see it goes to Dido. It goes to Lady Dido.
Yep.
And she looks into it, and she sees the face of Laura Palmer start to appear.
Yeah, the classic photo, her high school prom photo.
Her high school prom photo. Yep. And she kisses the orb, and then sends it on its, puts it into the projector.
Well, she sends it up into what looks like a brass horn made of gold.
Yes.
And then that thing kicked it into a projector, and the projector is showing like a 1950s rendition of Planet Earth for it seems like an old high school projection, this is Planet Earth.
Yes. Right. It looks like a 1950 welcome to Earth.
yeah, just basically when you and I probably saw in elementary school, just Earth is made out of water.
You live on the Earth.
Yeah, and so it sends it to Earth. And this is basically where, again, this is Lynch's good versus evil dualism. The man created the bomb, which Judy then spawns the evil that men do, which is Bob. Which Albert, it's offhand comment from the second season, which I'm glad they embraced and then just went with that concept of a throwaway line, it felt like.
Yes.
Yes. And the White Lodge's answer to that is putting Laura back onto the planet too, where it's just and it's not like a traditional this is not Star Wars. This is
this is not traditional.
These are just entities, essences that they're throwing out there. Bob and Laura, they eventually cross paths. In fact, Laura's born into Bob's house. Which is interesting when we get into all that, because it's more when we talk about Bob and Laura being Leland's daughter, and then Sarah's Judy. There's a lot of weird incestual things even
going on. Yes,
this is more of the surreal version of Fire Walk with Me with the incest.
Yeah, very much so. And so this, let's finish this part, and then because we're almost done here, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, because it's so cool. But yeah, let's go on.
So yeah, the orb floats down. She kisses it, sends it to Earth. It goes into the screen through that gold tube, and then it kind of stops there. And then it's gonna go to a few years later. But
did you see where it stopped on the map?
I did not see where it stopped on the map.
Washington State.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So let's discuss what this means and how this changes the dynamic of what was the first 2 seasons, because we're going to see a lot of retconning here, right?
Twin Peaks, 90% retcons.
Pretty much. So, you're discussing the whole ancestral relationship between Judy and Bob and Laura, and how they're all really combined, right?
Yep.
So it's not this traditional good versus evil. Like one could look at it in a terms, I think, of, well, if Bob corrupted Laura, then that was the end of it. No, that's not really what I think the thing with it was. Unless you do.
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, good. Then we're on agreement there, because I wanted to hear your part if you did. What's interesting to me, though, is the time. And we're going to jump ahead here. I'm not going to give too much spoilers. But when you think about when this happened and when Laura appeared, and how this season ends, it almost is like they sent Laura through, but didn't do it right, and the timing was off.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with Cooper leaving the lodge too. Didn't do it right, and the timing was off.
Exactly. So I think this, when you really look at this episode and you put 2 and 2 together, what comes later, and like I said, I don't want to give spoilers, it actually makes more sense in my mind. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, Laura was basically born in the wrong time.
Yeah. There's also the other flip way to take this, and this is kind of what I also take it as too, is that Bob's an influence. He influences Leland. And we see in Twin Peaks that Laura has a positive influence on people. Bob, a negative one. And I think that was another rationale why, if they're going to be played, like the Black Lodge are going to be playing this, we're at least going to, because Laura is the beacon of hope in Twin Peaks, even though she's a flawed character. She's human. We're all flawed. We're not, nobody's perfect, but when we meet Laura, it's this idolized character who brought hope to this small town. And Bob is the influence who brings terror and awfulness to this small town. So I think there's a level of that there too.
Yeah, I do like that theory as well, where where the evil influence, or where the Black Lodge influence is, there's a White Lodge influence.
Yeah. It's the balancing of the scales, like with this. So yeah, so like there's many ways to take this, and I agree with yours, and I also think mine works too.
Yes,
we just don't know what's right, and I think they both could be. For all
they both could be. Now, here's something else I want to bring up before we get to the next part of it, which is also somewhat surreal, but at least we get some dialogue.
So, this is the water, and this is the well.
Oh, God damn it. So, the other side of it is, it's really interesting that, so do you think that the experiment, or Judy, is kind of like, she's giving birth essentially to Black Lodge entities? Now, you and I have always talked about how we feel that she's outside the Black Lodge, right? And obviously in this regards, the firemen, although be it very powerful, may not be the experiment of the White Lodge, right?
No, I have a theory on the woodsman.
Okay. All right. So let's hear your theory on the woodsman.
They're basically, because the convenience store, we go back to Fire Walk with Me, Philip Jeffries is talking about how he went to one of their meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So this tells me, like, there's Black Lodge, White Lodge, and there's other elements, other things that are similar to these lodges. But so with the woodsmen, I think, are a different thing. They're the convenience store. So you have the Black Lodge, White Lodge convenience store. Michelle Front has her thing where she's kind of like between the real world and these worlds. So I think it's kind of like divvied up by that. And when Bob was born, so were his acolytes, if you will. His acolytes are the woodsmen. They're not bound to the Black Lodge. They don't care if they're breaking the rules, because obviously they're with the guy who's breaking the rules of the Black Lodge.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also makes sense that Bob would be the outlier in the Black Lodge, right? I mean, if he's born from something outside the Black Lodge,
Yeah.
yet found himself into the Black Lodge, he's kind of always been, in this regards. It's interesting that the arm worked with him because for his own gains, but realized that this guy's not operating within the confines of the rules of what we've set up.
Yeah. Bob's an outlier, like you said. He's chaos, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't contain chaos. Where Mike, when he was killing, I think there were steadfast rules. The arm he doesn't break the rules, even though he might have broken the rule when he appeared as the bubblegum tree with Ike the Spike. I think
Squeeze his hand off.
But I think at this point, the Black Lodge is an absolute chaos, and they need to rein things in. So
yes, yeah. So essentially, I think that's key as well, because I think a lot of things operated that. Then, if you look at again, having read Secret History, things get really fucked up after the detonation of the bomb, right? Like that's when all this activity starting to manifest itself, and things aren't behaving in the realm of the rules that they need to be. And I think that needs to be done, is that you have to eliminate Bob to get the chaos to end and get the rules back into play. And I think that also plays into what we see later with Judy, which I'm not going to give away. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and you can you see it like when Bob in Firewalk with Me, when he's out causing chaos, he still has to pay. Still has to pay Mike and the arm. They need their Garmonbozia from him. He has to pay a cost for what he's doing, and that the pain and sorrow of which he has to give them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are rules. Bob is breaking them. And I also like the point, like I think the A-bomb was the seed into which Judy birthed Bob. Like it's kind of like it's obviously it's a sexual thing with Judy, and she procreated with the evil that men do, and Bob was the spawn of that.
Essentially. So now we cut to August 5th, or was it August 6th? I think it's
August 5th, 1956.
In New Mexico. Now, I want to say I scoured before this episode, scoured something relevant to that date. I couldn't find anything, okay, except a Reddit thread. And they brought up something really interesting, was that there's several shots during this date where they're showing the moon. However, that date, it was a new moon. You wouldn't have seen the moon. So it brought up the idea of, is this an alternate timeline? Is this showing when things started to get fucked up? Do you have anything as far as significance for that date?
I think we're digging too deep if we're going by moon cycles. That's
my thought. That's my
I think
thought.
It's aesthetic for Lynch. He's really big into numbers and specific dates. I could probably, if I wanted to, I could probably look into the Room to Dream, see if August 5th, 1956 has any significance. In that book, I mean, you find a lot of things that he uses in Twin Peaks. He had a girlfriend whose last name was Briggs. One of his artists that got him into the art life, his name was Bushnell. It's just he uses things from his actual life sometimes in his art. So I think it's probably something like that.
That's my thought, right? Like I said, when you're getting in the moon cycles, you're trying too hard. I guarantee you, Lynch did not look at that date. Frost did not look at that date to figure out when there was a new moon versus a full moon and fuck around with that. I'm in complete agreement with you.
I'm guessing August 5th, 1956 might have been like the first time Lynch kissed a girl. Something like that.
Something like that, like his first date or something significant of that nature. Right. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's something like that. I think it's like a date that's personal to him, and he just wanted to use it. I like digging deep, but when we're getting to moon cycles, I think we're going down rabbit holes that are just
too far.
It doesn't do any good.
I agree. I completely agree.
But on August 5th, 1956, when Lynch probably had his first kiss, he probably associated that with a weird ass egg that hatches a toad fly.
Crawl through the desert.
Across the desert.
Probably because that's how his stomach. That's what he felt like was in his stomach when he kissed that girl.
Yeah, or that's how he feels when he gets a boner. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. It feels like there's a
cucumber tastes better pickled.
I feel like there's a toad frog in my belly every time we kiss.
David, quit talking.
Get back to the interview, David. So it starts to crawl through a desert, and we see a boy and a girl, and they are distinctly labeled boy and girl.
We know who the girl is.
We know who the girl is because of the secret dossier.
Yep. Final dossier.
Excuse me. The final dossier tells you who the girl is.
Yeah. And there's this say, this is a young Sarah Palmer.
Yes, it is.
This is pretty much the last night of her innocence,
mm-hmm.
in a way. She's on a date with some young boy. She finds a penny. She's really excited. Faced up too, that's usually good luck. Not for Sarah Palmer.
Not for Sarah Palmer. Sarah Palmer's a life of tragedy.
And then it cuts away, and like Mary Poppins floating to Earth, we see woodsmen floating to the planet Earth.
Floating to the desert. The anti-Mary Poppins. The setting of the street.
And this is like where it's like Lynch goes on like full-on horror movie, and I love it. I really want him to make a straight-up horror movie. You know what?
So genius, right?
I mean, it's fucking creepy. Like, wow. Yeah, they just float down from the sky. We see some people driving around, and a woodsman comes walking up, and his voice is very distorted, and he goes, "Got a light?
Got a light?
Yeah.
Got a light? Got a light?" Over and over.
And it's kind of hypnotizing people in a sense, but then they just drive off because this is just creepy. It's a bunch of dirty, bearded men on the road.
Yes, and everything kind of slows down for them. And we talk about that, how when you get affected by entities, by large entities or by these supernatural entities, shit gets fucked up for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this is the people are obviously horrified. And I like it, Final Dossier, they bring up that these people gave eyewitness statements that they saw strange woodsmen. Police. But I mean, that's fucking freaky as shit.
Right.
Maybe they should have thrown some loose change at him or something. Get away!
Get away! Get away!
What do you want? The woodsman needs about $350.
I need about $350. You're gonna keep coming back. That woodman's gonna keep coming back.
God damn you, Loch Ness monster! Leave my family alone.
We've made so many fucking references to other things this episode. Holy shit!
The Joe-down.
This is very much like a Joe-down episode of Twin Peaks. So then it cuts back to the young girl and the boy, and they share a brief kiss. And she goes home. She's happy. He walks off. Cut back to the woodsman stalking a fucking radio station like a goddamn slasher movie. He asks the receptionist for a light and then crushes her skull. And I mean, the visuals of this, everything's shaky, blood's flowing. What the fuck, Joe?
Yeah, it's creepy. Do you think he would have not killed her if she gave him a light? He didn't really give her a chance, but
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, what is it with him asking about wanting the light? What do you think the significance of that question is?
Well, I mean, a cigarette isn't lit, so I'm guessing he wants to smoke it.
That's my thought. I mean, Lynch loves smoking.
Yeah, I don't know what the significance is. We know Lynch loves smoking, so I think that was another aesthetic thing. He just wanted this entity just wants to smoke.
And I think it comes back to maybe that Twilight Zone episode where is it safe? It's just saying something to say something to make it creepy.
Yeah, and he has the worst Nick fit I've ever seen because he crushes that poor woman's skull.
So bad. So bad.
And we should also add, as this horror is going on, My Prayer by the Platters is playing.
Yes, My Prayer by the Platters is playing.
And he goes into the DJ booth where he grabs the guy's skull, cuts the record, he goes on the radio, and he repeats this poem.
Mm-hmm.
This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eyes, and dark within. And he repeats this.
Mm-hmm.
Repeats it. And it becomes, he hypnotizes. And I like what they do here with like small town America, especially like in like Lynch's mind, like his weirdness, all like everybody's listening to like one radio station.
Yes.
That's kind of how it was, especially in a remote area where this obvious is. And you just kind of see these people in like a diner, and you see a guy who's working on his truck, and you see young Sarah Palmer. They're all like listening to the same thing. But he keeps repeating it, and then they all kind of fall into like a hypnotic state where they just kind of pass out.
Yes. And they do, including, it cuts back to the girl as well. She passes out. What do you think the poem means, or what is your interpretation of this poem?
It could be like what Twin Peaks is. Consume it, overtake it, the innocence in the dark. I mean, there's duality in the fucking poem.
There is.
So that's kind of how I take it.
I wonder if it feels somewhat like the Fire Walk With Me poem in a way, and I wonder if it's the Woodsman's version of the Fire Walk With Me poem. It could be.
I'm not sure. It's very interesting. I just don't know. And it has like, even in the poem, there's an Easter egg of the horse. Like every time we see the horse is danger in the show.
Well, yes, but also it cuts back to Margaret talking about the pale horse as well, right?
Yes.
And, pale horse being death. So I do think that this is like a version there within, because you look at it. Okay, so one of the theories is if you go, this is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within. If you reverse so through the dark of future past, the magician longs to see one chance reach out between two worlds. Fire walk with me. If you go, me walk with fire, worlds two between out chance. One sees too long, magician the past futures of dark the through, right? Yes, it doesn't make sense when you put it in that regards, but if you actually break the poems around backwards, they parallel each other. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that. It could also just be something they wrote.
Yes, absolutely. It could be something they wrote, but I do think, knowing Frost, he wanted to make it something like the Fire Walk With Me poem.
Yeah, and I think it also plays in with like just life, and that's what life is, light and dark, and the dualism. So yeah, I think the poem has many levels.
Yes, there's many meanings to the poems. Okay, sorry for that tangent.
No, I love tangents.
So then we get to through this whole time. He's got as he's reading this poem over and over, he's got the disc jockey by the fucking skull, man.
The disc jockey, when I first saw this, I thought it might have been Joe Latturio from The State.
Right?
It's not, but he looks a lot like him.
It would have been amazing if it was. No, it's an actor by the name of Colin Douglas, but this whole time, I mean, you hear the crushing sound the whole time.
He's just like, and then he finishes the poem and just fucking wrecks this guy.
Wrecks this dude, right? And then he leaves, walks in the desert, and then you can hear the horse being heard. So that leads me more to like the death, like the horseman style of death. Yep.
Yeah, and before he walks in the darkness, we see the bug, the toad fly, crawl into Sarah Palmer's room, and just unsettling. She opens her mouth and it just crawls in.
It crawls in, and that is the end of Sarah Palmer innocence in the world.
Yeah, another tragic. Twin Peaks really needed another tragic figure.
Yeah. Yep.
And there was no dedication on this episode.
There was no dedication on this episode. Holy fuck. We went through a lot. Talk to me about what you know about the writing, the background, those type of things. Because I want to hear what you know about that.
All right. So, like I know with the writing, I thought maybe Lynch went off and did this on his own, but no. Frost and him came up with a blueprint, and he knew that. So he says, "I knew what David was going to take as a blueprint for something extraordinary. He ran with it, elevated it to a whole other level. The atomic explosion was probably half a page as written, but I knew that in David's hands, it could run as long as 10 to 12 minutes, and it would be riveting. It was certainly a narrative departure from what we had done before. There was no question about that. But it needed to stand apart, and it needed to blow your mind, so mission accomplished."
Yes.
And yeah, it's can you imagine these two, like, because they wrote this like via Skype sessions, like just the conversation, like, yeah, and then there's this bug thing. Bob just becomes an orb and vomited out like a devil lady, like, cheer. Woo. But yeah, and then I just remember before this aired that Sunday, like, I think it was Dwayne Dunham was like, he kind of said on Twitter something like, tonight's episode is going to be fucking, it's going to blow your mind. And everybody's like, oh, Cooper's coming back. And it's like, nope.
Nope.
Because up to this point, we're all like, fucking Dougie turned into Cooper already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, from Room to Dream, Lynch called the insectoid a frog moth, and came up with the idea from his travel in Europe with Jack Fisk. He said the frog moth came from Yugoslavia, where Jack and I were in Europe. We caught the Oriental Express in Athens, take us back to Paris. So we were going up through Yugoslavia, and it's really, really dark. And at a certain point in the train, we stopped, and there was no station, but we could see people getting off the train. And when I got off the train, I stepped into the soft dust that was like 8 inches deep, and it was blowing. And out of the earth, these huge, giant moths like frogs were leaping out. So that was the frog moth, and it just sort of showed up in the world of Twin Peaks. Yeah,
he comes up with these ideas, and he just kind of stores them away. Log Lady was a character he had an idea for Eraserhead. He doesn't squander a good idea, Paul.
No. Nope. He does not. So let's talk about the reception of this episode. We're going to talk about the reception of it. What do you think this got on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'd imagine it was pretty good. 100% rating, I guess.
It did. It got 100% rating with an average score of 8.67 out of 10. The critical consensus was, quote, Part 8 adds yet another masterful chapter of the Twin Peaks return, arguably one of the finest hours of creator David Lynch's incredible career. Liz Shannon Miller for the IndieWire, however, gave the episode a B, expressing disappointment for the disturbingly retro special effects in the opening scene, and called the Trinity nuclear test sequence beautiful nonsense. And said that This is an episode that challenges viewers to appreciate its beauty, even if we don't understand it. Wherever you land on it, one thing cannot be argued. You've never seen this before on television. And
Yeah,
you have not.
I was. I think my first thought is like, I can't believe David Lynch had the balls to do that.
Right.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. I do believe that there's people, aspiring film people, that are going to use that episode, and we're going to start seeing things like that probably in the next 10, 15 years.
Oh yeah, it's just kind of like, they Frost and Lynch, they pushed, like they changed the game. They did it with the first show, and I think with the return was polarizing in that people did not get what they wanted or expected. But it changed things, man. I was like, wow, you can make like an 18-hour long movie and call it a show or whatever. It was, yeah, and especially part 8 here. It's just the balls, man. Just those fucking iron balls of his. He's like, yep, this is gonna be an episode. Here you go.
Right. Now, it's important to note that I don't think it won any of these, but it was nominated for the Creative Arts Emmy Awards, the 70th, for in a limited series, Outstanding Cinematography, Outstanding Single Camera Picture Editing, Outstanding Sound Editing, and Outstanding Sound Mixing. Like this, and it did win, it was nominated for a Golden Reel Award for sound editing. It was nominated for Outstanding Achievement from the Cinema Audio and Sound Mixing. The Art Directors Guild nominated it for 1 hour contemporary single camera series. This blew people away.
Yeah, and it confused a lot of people too.
Dude, if you go to the Reddit, the rabbit hole, the crazy rabbit holes that people go down on this episode is insane, dude. It's insane.
Oh, I'd imagine. Because it's just it's like a painting. You can draw pretty much whatever you want out of, especially with the first explosion and going in and all that. It's beautiful and it's weird, and I can't believe it was on fucking TV.
Correct. I mean, this is something that you see in an art house film. This is not something you see in a limited series show.
Honestly, I've never seen an art house film like this either, and I've seen a lot of those. This was just
fine, like a student art film.
Yeah. I mean, this was like, he's like, I'm gonna kind of like pay tribute to Eraserhead and go along those lines, but I'm gonna make it have like no plot or whatever. I'm just gonna go all out. Like, it's fucking amazing.
It really is an amazing episode in and of itself. And again, there's so much you could talk about what the meanings of the things are. And like I said, you go on the Reddit for this particular episode, the theories, the fan theories, the discussions it brought about, even from critics and people that watched it. This is one of those things that has to be experienced, I believe. I mean, you just need to experience this episode. I mean, even if you only watched the to get to this episode, I think you'll want to see what happens. I mean, you're going to get to the point where you're going to want to see what happens afterwards anyway. So you're going, where the fuck is this going to go? But this is something that I think needs to be seen. Matt Zoller Sets of the Vulture said it best, where he said, Part 8 is the best television episode of 2017, and it's the single most impressive episode of television drama I've seen in 20 years.
Absolutely. It's pure artistic expression, and you don't see this.
No.
I haven't seen it since, like a show doing something this just gutsy. I mean,
yeah,
that's a risk. I mean, it was a risk bringing a show back that, a lot of people through nostalgia and Netflix and all that, and then like completely not deliver the elements that people were expecting, and then you throw this in there. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, there is no pandering in return.
No, there is no pandering. And I think at the time it was incredibly frustrating. But the genius of it is, again, during the rewatch, you get it. It clicks. Like, you're like, holy shit, this is brilliant. Even an episode like this, you go, this can make sense to me. Like, I see why this is in there. But you're right. As far as it being a pure artistic expression in television, you don't see something this intelligent.
No.
Ever.
No. This is, yeah. Again, I'm surprised, kudos to Showtime for letting, I could see other networks being like, there's no way in hell you guys are doing this. Like, there's no dialogue just outside the first 15 minutes.
For as amazing as HBO has been with its programming, I think HBO would have had a huge problem with this episode.
Oh, I'd imagine they would.
I think they would have had a huge problem with the series as a whole. I think that's why he went to Showtime.
Yeah. It's an experience. It's and I like it a lot more on rewatch. Because like when I first watched it, I was just like utterly baffled, frustrated. We all were, because we're like, what's happening? But on rewatch, and then like with the supplemental material with Secret History and Final Dossier, it's so much more enjoyable. It's so much more rich to watch.
Yeah, and I will say that Secret Dossier really, really was necessary. It's a necessary read.
Yeah. Both the Frost books are necessary to get, especially Secret History with the White Sands and all that. Jack Parsons and The Ring and all that. It was essential to understand what's going on in Part 8.
Yep, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I'd be really confused. Like, White Sands, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I would have been like, why are we talking about the nuclear tests here? But again, they bridge that gap and bring it up and spend a lot of time in it in Secret History. So when it comes up, you're like, that's why they were talking about it so much. Fuck, Joe. Anything else you want to discuss about this epic, amazing, something we'll never see on TV for many years again?
I think we covered it, man. Like, I mean, it's hard to put into words because it's just so much going on, and it with very little exposition, almost no exposition.
There's one thing I think this is a good time. We've already hinted at, we've already talked about it, so we're not going to ruin anything. So we feel that Judy is in. Up to this point, we have talked about that Judy is in Sarah Palmer. Excuse me. So when that egg hatched, that egg was birthed from the experiment. So is the experiment separate from Judy? What's your take on how that all fits together?
There's a chance they're separate entities. I don't think so, because I think the reason Mr. C is looking for Judy is that's what he was spawned from. And he found out in the last 25 years that, it's just like Judy was laying dormant. In my theory is laying dormant in Sarah Palmer until the events of this. I think there's parts where she came out, but I think my guess is that's because Bob's going back. It's like, it's the fucked up version of of returning to your mom sort of thing.
Sure.
That's why because that's what created him. That's why he wants Judy.
I question it myself. I'm not completely convinced that it's the same entity. I think that I'm on that wavelength where the reason why he's looking for Judy is because I think through Judy he could get to the experiment. That's my thought.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like Judy, the way they describe her, is like kind of like pure evil, and like the whole thing. It just if something's pure evil, why would they need a a boss above it sort of situation, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just don't know. It's the way it's set up is ambiguous by design, so
Yes.
it's good for conversation and theorizing. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the only two people know, and they're not telling.
And they're not going to say a word about it.
No.
Holy fuck! All right. Yeah, I think we described this this episode way better than I think we were concerned about it.
So should we start describing Eraserhead, and like maybe we'll watch Mandy and describe that too?
Oh, God damn it! Oh, crazy! We might have to go on like a David Lynch bin. Like we could do an entire podcast about Inland Empire, the long version.
I think it would kill us, man.
I would what's fat. I was laying on my side when I was watching this episode, and my left arm started to go numb, and I'm like, uh-oh. Oh shit, I'm getting Dougied. So what else we got going on in the other things going on now that we're through this and getting back to reality and out of our acid trip? What's going on at the Joedown?
Oh, okay. So this week we released our review of A View to a Kill, the most boring James Bond movie I've ever seen in my life.
And my feelings is it can't be because it doesn't have Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, The Living Daylights was more entertaining than this. We reviewed that too. So when we did Bond month like a few years ago, in fact, we did Bond movies and we did somehow missed Roger Moore. We did all the others, even on Her Majesty's Secret Service with Lazenby we reviewed.
Oh Christ!
So yeah, but after this, now we're heading into Halloween month, where. Because I love horror movies and Joe Brown hates them, and I'm interested because so here's our picks. First up is Mandy. Second is the Gus Van Sant shot-for-shot remake of Psycho.
God damn it!
John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah.
What was Brown's last pick? I forgot all of a sudden. Yeah, let's see what he picked. I think... Oh, Carrie, because we had to get some John Travolta.
Oh, for fuck's sake. All right. Oh, man. That's going to be... I feel for you.
Why?
Dude, the Psycho shot-for-shot remake was so bad.
Oh, it's terrible. I'm interested have you seen Mandy?
I have seen parts. I haven't sat through the whole damn thing.
You got to sit through that. I'm interested to see how Joe Brown reacts. It's one of the most fucked up movies.
It's fucked up. It's fucked up. Yeah, that's why I said it.
It's very surreal. It's very it feels like an acid trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in his take because somebody told me to watch it. And I got Shudder because I love horror movies.
Yep.
Pop it on because I think, Nicolas Cage is going to be fucking crazy. I love it, whatever. And it's such a slow burn. It's a slow burn until like this madness, and it's just like it's one of those weird experiences that I can't describe. But I'm also excited just because John Carpenter's Halloween. We need a good old slasher flick in that.
Wait a minute, did I see this? Did I see Mandy? I watched the whole thing on that.
It's something you wouldn't forget. That'd be like saying, did I watch part 8 of The Return? I really don't recall. Like, it's one of those things if you saw it.
Yeah, it's just I try to... Because he did another movie similar to this.
Yes. Yeah, the filmmaker did a movie a few years before. It was very similar. Yes.
Okay. So I must have saw that and not Mandy. Okay.
Well, if you have Shudder, I suggest I know you're not a huge Nicolas Cage fan, but it's one of those. It's an experience.
Is it like this? Is it like Society? Is it an experience? Like, have you seen Society?
it's an experience. I can't explain it, man.
Okay.
It's like, well, there's movies that you experience. It's like you experience pink flamingos. You experience a race cat, like
Anything with John Waters you experience, dude.
There's no describing how you feel. You feel just exhausted after it. But yeah, so
well, you have Shudder, and I recommend. I believe it's on Shudder. There's a movie called Society, and I strongly advise you watch it.
All right, I'll watch it.
Yep, that's one of those movies that you also experience. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right, but that's what I got. What do you guys have going on for Cast That Movie?
So, the latest episode we just did was Maximum Overdrive.
Fantastic movie. I love that movie.
Which put Joe into a sour mood the whole episode. And then we
sour mood. It's Emilio Estevez and AC/DC. And the coked up Stephen King, who didn't really remember making the movie.
And the Green Goblin. And then we did our dream project was Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72, which I think needs to be done ASAP. And I really point out in that one, and I'll say it here too, that, if you are ever interested in political journalism or just how anything is done in that regards, there are so many political journalists that consider that book their Bible.
Yeah.
Prolific.
It's 90% bullshit, but like a lot of it is, but it's the most honest. I think that's what George McGovern said. It's 90% bullshit, but it's the most honest book I've ever read.
Yeah, because Hunter, and I bring this up. I was explaining this to Joe. You guys want to hear this in the episode as well. If you're listening to this, you really want to listen to that one because it's fascinating. But I was explaining that to him was he's making a cartoon of all these things, but at the same time he's being super honest about all this is going on, and it was killing him as a person because he was trying to really find honesty and truth and the American justice in politics. And there was none to be found.
Yep.
So, that's kind of a short snippet of that one. And then our next one for Cast That Movie will be Waterworld and steroids in baseball.
Woo! Oh, Dennis Hopper, Kevin Costner. Costner drinking his own pee. What could go wrong, man?
Costner with prosthetic gills.
If I remember right, I think you only see it like once. And that's
you only see it like once. Again, I'll give you guys a little tidbit here. This is a movie that didn't recoup itself until streaming services came out. It took to streaming for them to make back the money.
Yeah. Wasn't that his first movie after Dances with Wolves, too? Like, after he won all these Academy Awards?
No, I don't think so. I think he did something else in between.
Probably a baseball movie.
I think it was a baseball movie. I can double check. 1 second here, because that's a great question. Let me just pull up his IMDb quick. And, because if it is, that's a shit show. Because then followed by that, he did Postman, which was awful.
Hey, Tom Petty was in that.
God bless
Tom Petty, rock legend in The Postman.
God bless his soul. But Jesus Christ. No, because after Dances with Wolves, he had a string of hits. It was Robin Hood, it was JFK, it was The Bodyguard, then he was Wyatt Earp, then he did The War, then Waterworld, then Tin Cup, then The Postman.
It was his follow-up as a director.
Yes, it was his follow-up as well. Technically, and I'll get into that in the episode. Technically, it was his follow-up as a director. There was a lot of turmoil on the set, and I will be going in depth into that.
Well, Dennis Hopper, he's a calm, rational human being.
We both did Super Mario Brothers, and Dennis Hopper was not happy with that fucking experience.
Well, if you want to look up his experience making Human Highway, Neil Young's movie, I believe he actually stabbed a woman on that set. He was just a hot mess.
Dude, he oh God, was it on the set of yeah, it was on the set of Apocalypse Now. He would do a carny trick where he would take a bunch of dynamite and make a circle and stand in the center and light it all off. And the idea is that if you're in the center of that, it creates a vortex so you don't get hurt. But this was a trick that he would do on set when he would get bored. He would light dynamite around himself and set it off. Doing goddamn carny tricks.
Let's also remember his first movie after sobering up was Blue Velvet.
Yeah. I love it in that movie. That is probably my favorite Dennis Hopper role.
Oh yeah, I like Dennis Hopper. He's a good actor. He's just fucking nuts, but
it's fucking nuts. So yeah, that's what we got going on. Then Bears Beats Bobbleheads we're both in. Which episode are we doing next? I can't remember.
Oh my gosh.
Is it The Client?
No, I think The Client came out last week. I think it's Performance Review.
Performance review. Okay. All right. Yes.
Michael and his coffee breath.
Oh, Michael and his coffee breath. Oh, Lord. All right. We could go on for hours on this and keep going. All right, Joe, take us out. What do you got?
This is the water. This is the well. That's all I got. I'm exhausted, everybody.
You know what? At this one, I'm with him on this one. Just fucking nuclear bombs. What do you do?
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah. Goodbye, everybody.